So welcome into our class. I always said my last class, but I don't keep my word. And I go for one more. So I hope this is the last one. But so the course is called Faith, Science, Wisdom. Three of the greatest achievements of human mind. These three, I call them complementary trinity of humanity. Each of them has different historical duration. The oldest one is faith. From the very beginning of humanity, when man acquired the basic outlook around his environment, man had some kind of faith. And it is the only one which survives up to now. Probably 85% of humanity is still fascinated with faith and organizes human order. I define faith as an assurance of things hoped for, conviction of things not seen. Greek word is pistis, pistis, Latin word fides, fides, F-I-D-E-S, pistis, P-I-S-T-I-S. So out of these two words we have faith, fides. It is inner attitude, conviction, or trust relating man to some entity outside of himself, which represents an ultimate salvation, ultimate trust. So this is an attempt, to define what we always understood under faith. And as I said before, more than 80% of humanity is connected very deeply with faith. The other one I will be dealing with will be science, which manifests various intellectual activities concerned with physical world and its phenomena, including systematic ideational structure conceived by the imagination of man and his scientific theories. Science is a later arrival, much later arrival in the history of human mind. We have the first organized scientific movement going into 6th century BC. Before, there is nothing we could call science. So it is 6th century BC in Greece. How it happened is a mystery. What happened laid down the foundation for Western science. It was short-lived. The scientific tradition of Greece did not survive much longer. Within 6 centuries, there was a powerful revival of faith. With advent of Christianity, science, as invented by Greeks, was relegated somewhere where it won't be found for another 1,500 years. So we have this conflict of faith and science, where science was able to establish itself mostly in Greece. In Rome, scientific theories were not very well liked. The Romans were interested only in one aspect of Greek culture, and it was rhetoric art. The best students of Rome were sent to study in Greece and to study not art, drama, philosophy, science, to study oratory art. This is what made Romans great. So the best minds of Rome admired Greeks, but they saw very narrowly Greek intellect and picked up what they liked, oratory art. So science is the other great product of human mind. I will treat faith also as the first great product of human mind. The third part is spread in all cultures and civilizations. I propose to treat proverbs comparatively as wisdom. Wisdom pronouncement which express cross-cultural and intercultural communication of human race. One has to reintroduce the value of wisdom as an inseparable complementary counterpart of the value of knowledge. I was fortunate to have a friend, close friend, Dr. Siu, who organized a great movement in the United States called Panetics. He wrote 3 volumes of work on proverbs. He was of Chinese origin, born, raised in Hawaii. His father was a wise man. He became one of the leading American biologists, Dr. Siu, advisor to our presidents. He lived in Washington, D.C., where he organized the movement of Panetics, a movement which organized humanity around the concept of pain and how to avoid pain. Paneti is pain, Panetics. So he wrote these 3 volumes. I hope I will be able to find it and show it to you. When he died, he asked me to do something with it, and he meant to publish it. So it was produced in 3 volumes, but shortly before he died, he asked me to use it in my course on Panetics, which I offered about 15 years ago. Another aspect of this third concept of wisdom, I got involved under influence of Dr. Siu in dealing with proverbs. And about 20 years ago, I was admitted into a course on human, on African humanities at the University of California in Los Angeles. It was a course where 20 people were selected from various states to attend it. I was lucky to be one of them. African humanities, who cared for it in the West? You know, what is the concept of African humanities when we had problem with our own humanities? And I was surprised that at the very beginning, I was told that I have to learn one of the 50 languages in Ghana. Akan language. So I asked, why? 1 of 50? No, my African professors told me, you will see what you can do with it. So I learned kind of pidgin, Akan. I was able to translate, and what I was translating the proverbs. They communicate through proverbs in all of these 50 languages. So learning one language, I was able to understand all others, because the basis for communication were proverbs. And now, how shocked I was to find out when I went to Akan proverb, the proverb I translated was, when you have a rolling stone, it will never gather moss. You know, I could not believe, my mind, exactly the same I heard before. So I translated again word by word, and it was clear. So if you move, you never gather moss. I mentioned it to Dr. Siu. We have it in Chinese, and he told me in Chinese. Japanese, German, Russian, Czech, English. It dawned on me, In Proverbs, we have something unique. Communication, which is done in simplest, Okamist way. Simplicity plays the role. Poetry plays the role. And it expresses the deepest conviction of human findings. So in all races, you find proverbs which are communicating exactly the same. It was an amazing discovery after having had studied Kant, German philosopher. He, in his study of knowledge, formulated a concept called synthetic a priori. Synthetic, derived from experience, which precedes experience, is always embraced as essence of human knowledge. It dawned on me that Kant didn't know, and it was kind of proven that the synthetic a priori don't exist. They are either synthetic, derived from experience, or a priori, mathematical deductions, derived as deduction from human reason. There are no synthetic a priori as Kant claimed. Now it dawned on me they are in Proverbs. They are derived from experience, formulated by human mind as finding of essential relationship of man in the world. So this was my discovery. Synthetic a priori is here, but not as Kant meant it. As all these unknown people who use proverbs in the sake of communication. I remembered as a young boy, my grandmother from Moravian Slovakia, who communicated also through proverbs. And there were funny proverbs which kind of stick in my mind. And later on I found out that in Chinese they were very similar. So she communicated through proverbs. It was funny. And I remember how funny they were. And I didn't know that one day I will end up trying to penetrate below the surface of Proverbs. So, faith, science, wisdom. Our Western culture and civilization paid attention to dualistic fight. It is something we have very deeply in us. Either or. Religion, later science. Either or. Our greatest philosophers, Aristotle and Plato, in ancient Greece, formulated dualistic system of human thinking. Aristotle called it logic. He gave us laws of logic, 3 laws of logic. First, law of identity. What is. What is not, is not. It's clear, nobody will argue with that. Second law of non-contradiction. Law of non-contradiction. Is and is not cannot be. Because law of identity says what is, and what is not, is not. So is and is not cannot be. And third law of Aristotle logic is a law called tertium non datum. There is nothing third. Excluded middle. Excluded middle. Either or. Nothing in between. Either or. So these 3 laws are laws of our Western logic, Western way of thinking, which we have embraced, and we don't know anything else and don't want to know anything else.
That's the 4th law.
Yeah. This is our greatness, and this is our poor side of our Western culture. For a long time, nobody dared to touch it because everybody appealed to Aristotle. You don't know your Aristotle. You don't know 3 laws of thought. Be it in faith, in science. Tertium non datur. There is nothing third. Either or. Make up your mind, either or. You see, it is a straitjacket. We enjoy our straitjacket, you know. And we don't even know that we have it. You can imagine what will happen when somebody comes into this Western tradition and who will postulate that there is a third value. He will be kicked out of the community. Everybody knows that there is nothing third, either or. Nothing like this happened until 20th century. And it happened in quantum physics. And quantum physics produced people like Niels Bohr, father of Copenhagen School of Quantum Physics. between particle, which is a very important element in quantum physics, and motion, you either know position of the particle or the speed of the particle. You cannot know both. But this went against the whole tradition of Western tradition. Niels Bohr, when he formulated his principle of complementarity, it did not dawn on him that he is knocking down Aristotle. He didn't know. There was somebody who, I don't know who was it, who suggested to him, you know, it is exactly the same what Chinese Taoist philosophy has. He said, what, Chinese? He was told, yeah, you know, in Chinese philosophy there is a principle of complementarity. Off he went to China, you know, to learn if something like this exists. He didn't know before, and he discovered that indeed it is a traditional aspect of Chinese thinking. Complementarity. It reinforced, you know, his belief. It was heavily criticized by Einstein, you know, and by others, because all of us in the West were attuned, you know, by the very tradition. And to go against the tradition, no, that's forbidden. So it was not only Bohr, but it was Heisenberg too, who formulated a principle of uncertainty. This principle of uncertainty is, again, reinforcement of this third value, fourth value, many values. So this was the position at the beginning of 20th century, and this position encouraged many young people, you know, to try to revise our tradition. We are still in the middle of it. It is so deeply seated in human mind of the West. It continues through the educational system that we believe that it is either or, not both. My personal experience, when I was in Beijing, I was there twice. In '89, during the revolution, in Tiananmen Square, I delivered lectures, and students, just like nowadays in Hong Kong, they were coming to me and they said, look, you are talking about, are you going to join us? I didn't come here, you know, to make a revolution. You either go with us or against us. Are you with the government? Are you speaking for the government? I said, no, I have nothing to do with the communist government. I have escaped from communism. You before I realized, they gave me a sign. And I marched with them on Tiananmen Square, and having no idea what was coming. I was in a way a guest of Chinese government, and one of the philosophers whom I met in Western Europe was in charge of my visit. So in the middle of all of these revolutionary moves at Tiananmen Square, once at midnight, somebody knocks at the door. I open the door and say, pack up your luggage. You go to airport. I am still here to stay for another week. No, this was my friend Chinese, member of Politburo, forced me into a car to Tokyo. During the flight, I heard the Chinese army knocked down the students at Tiananmen Square. So I thanked him. He saved my life. But later, 3 years later, I was persona non grata in China because they filmed all students who were walking there and with my hair, among the black hair and nails sticking out. So they knew what I was doing, so I was forbidden to ever enter China. In '92, there was a World Conference of Philosophy of Science, where I was supposed to present a paper. So the organizers, Western organizers and Chinese organizers, tried to get me there. And communist government refused. And at the end, my friends won, and I was given condition for 2 weeks I can come to China, provided I keep my mouth shut. And I don't go to any university, and I present my paper, and only at the floor of the conference I can speak. No, I, of course, could not control myself, and I moved around, but I never forget the students at the conference. I was reading a paper about multi-value system of logic. That's what I am criticizing when I criticize Aristotle. And they came and embraced me. And they said, you are one of the first ones from the West who is coming and clearly stating that if P then Q, that you are rewriting it. If A then B, you are adding to it. If A then B plus C plus D plus E and F and ad infinitum. This is Chinese. This is Chinese way how we see the world. The world is interconnected. Everything with everything. It is not 1, 2, either or. So these young people encourage me, and they say, you are not telling us anything new, You have not studied in China. I thought, no, I have not. I'm sorry. I tried to learn Chinese already 20 years. I cannot manage it, So in Chinese culture, mostly in Chinese culture, because the other cultures are very similar in this aspect, Korean and Japanese. They have a strong inclination to our non-Western more than two-value system. So back into our tree, it is only wisdom which has indications that there are other insights into human nature. But our traditional Western mind was set on either or. Like the Prussian army when they march, now Korean army learn it, Have you seen the Korean army march? So this is what is the basic characteristic of faith, end of our science, traditional before quantum physics science. Just keep in mind that both faith and science are products of our mind. So our mind is in certain way the way it is. So if this mind switches from faith to science, it will preserve the basic structural part within which it can move. Our Western post-Renaissance science divided the world into physical world and mental world. It is a purpose of science to study the physical world in terms of quantities. And because of quantities, mathematically. What is not physical entity is something secondary. Human mind. Human mind was relegated to something what is secondary, feelings, all these uncertainties. Our Western science studied only hard facts of nature. That these hard facts of nature are studied by human mind, never mind, don't mention mind. Mind has nothing to do with it. The 19th century is a tremendous breakthrough in our Western culture and civilization. The man responsible mainly was Charles Darwin with his theory of evolution. It was a jolt for the whole community of Western scholars in any field. Things are moving evolutionary. They are not static. Everything keeps moving. In the second half of 19th century, under influence of Darwin, even they disagreed with theory of evolution. But his impact was so tremendous that they started seeing the world as moving world. Now, faith, religion, was subject of historical process. So we have first theories, and one of the most outstanding one was French mathematician Auguste Comte. Auguste Comte wrote a revolutionary work under influence of Charles Darwin, philosophical work called Le Cours de la philosophie positive, Course of Positive Philosophy. In this great work, he formulated the historical development of human mind. And human mind starts with dimensions of faith. Animism, fetishism, polytheism, monotheism. So faith has a historical development from what he called animism, where nature is animated, nature has soul, and man discovers the soul in the nature. Fetishism. Man likes certain things and makes fetishes out of them. Like some people like cowboy hats, and they think that they are really real males, or the boots with high boots. And we have this fetishism still in us, but these are periods of Comte's religious development where people did not have a language properly formulated. They did not communicate through language. So there is nothing written about these animistic projections into the world or fetishistic projection. After many thousand years of development, we have polytheistic formulations. Polytheistic, which sees gods around in the nature. Lightning becomes a god. Natural phenomena are depicted as deities. Again, there is nothing written. It is oral tradition which binds humanity together. So these polytheistic religions represent a fast development without any writing. Writing comes much, much later. So man cannot communicate. Only orally attempting to communicate, but the feeling is here towards deities placed into the nature. I will be talking more about it next time. The man who stopped this faith expressed through animism, fetishism, and polytheism is one of the greatest Greek pre-Socratic thinker, Xenophanes. Sixth century BC. I was always amazed when I talked about Xenophanes, who is not emphasized in general in history of pre-Socratic philosophy, that students understood that he criticized only Greek polytheistic system. What he criticized is the whole man's concept of faith. Criticizing Greek polytheistic system, he became persona non grata. And so no. He dared to say, look, when you observe our gods, it is evident that they look like we human beings. Exactly like human beings. What he gave us was concept of anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism, anthropos is man, morphe in Greek means to make. Man made. According to Xenophanes, all religions are man-made. He meant it about his polytheistic religion, but Xenophanes' anthropomorphism can be extended to all religions, to all science, to all wisdom. Everything is man-made. So he gave us the first great insight. For Greeks, it was into their polytheistic system. One of pre-Socratics who started the philosophical and scientific tradition of ancient Greece. His second theory is called it escaped me. It comes back, you know. Yeah. I'm old foggy. Hypostatization, which is the second theory, hypostatization. Hypo, I take something from my mind, stato, throw it out, and find it there. Hypostatization. I create something about God, throw it into the nature, and discover it there. So, anthropomorphism and hypostatization. We can apply Xenophanes to all faiths, all religions, all science, and all wisdom. They are inventions of our minds. To penetrate into the mind is the most difficult adventure of human mind. We try to stay away from it. Scientifically, we were forbidden to go in because these were secondary quantities, secondary qualities, which are uncertain. We deal only with the external, primary qualities. Science deals with quantitative aspect of the world, with laws governing this quantitative world. There is never a question, where does that come? Where do the laws governing the world, how they are discovered? We don't know. We have intuitions, eurekas. This is how we discover. What is eureka? Can you have a eureka?
I found it.
Yes. This is how we describe it. And then when you are lucky, you say something significant when we start shaking. This is how far we came in discovery of the working of human mind. We have not progressed much more. We have neuroscience. Neuroscience deals with quantitative aspect of brain. You know, the brain never talks. Only we do talking. What is there? And it is so difficult to comprehend, that we cannot cross the meaning of what makes us tick. It is almost impossible to discover it. Some people have insights, but these are their personal insights. And we have to be very careful, listening to their personal discussion. Is it going to remain eternal taboo that we will never be able to get behind the screen? We are great masters of the secondary. Now we have language. Our language can describe everything. But we know that behind the language, behind words, are meaning. And these meanings have to be prior to words. Words are products of meanings. I cannot help but challenge St. John again, who said at the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was at the beginning. St. John was mistaken. Seriously mistaken. At the beginning has to be meaning. Meaning which creates a word. Wasser, water, voda. In various languages, you have a sense of meaning which precedes any word. So St. John was mistaken, but it is a long time ago. He couldn't know better. He couldn't know better.
We forgive him.
Yes, we forgive you. I had many problems with people in North Pole 40, 50 years ago when I talk about St. John, and it went through North Pole, through churches. And there is a professor at the university who challenges St. John, who says that he was mistaken. So the parents were coming and protesting, Then they said, he's coming from communist world, So this is... So back to 19th century, I have mentioned that 19th century set into movement examination of all human activities. Comte looked at the religion, gave us the stages of historical development: animism, fetishism, polytheism, monotheism. Monotheism was challenged, according to Comte, by science of Greeks and later by science of Renaissance. It continued its development, and the development of science can be put into a structure from the simplest one, from mathematics. Mathematics made it possible that physics became science. So mathematics is the first science. Comte did not realize that the first science is science of human mind. He made it into external science as being first, making physics scientific when mathematics became tool for physics. After physics, chemistry. After chemistry, incorporating mathematics, physics, chemistry into biology. And after biology, he created a new science called sociology. He didn't know what to do with another science of psychology, because this was no 19th century, you know. He closed the door, gave us system of sciences, from simplest one, mathematics, into most complex one, sociology, incorporating all sciences into itself. This was his great work of system of sciences called positive science. So he organized sciences in the second half of 19th century and laid down the foundation for 20th century. His movement became later very powerful movement of Vienna Circle during 20th century, in 20th of 20th century, led by physicists, mathematicians, biologists, sociologists, and under the spell of Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein, yeah. Ludwig Wittgenstein was an Austrian philosopher who wanted to become an engineer. And the more he studied engineering, more he got involved with mathematics. And more he got involved with mathematics, more he got involved with philosophy of mathematics. So he spiraled into philosophy of mathematics, and believed that he discovered a new field at the beginning of 20th century, philosophy of mathematics. He was at Cambridge University. No, it was at some other university when he was told there is a man who deals with it, Bertrand Russell. He took off, leaving everything behind, took a taxi from Manchester to Cambridge University, went directly into Bertrand Russell's lecture. At the end of the lecture, he criticized him. He was not inscribed as a student, you know. He criticized him, and at that time, Bertrand Russell said, he is either crank or a genius. And he says, the second was right. And he became his student, Bertrand Russell. Wittgenstein, Viennese, who still spoke broken English. But he had tremendous insights into human thinking, mathematical thinking. So this influenced this Vienna Circle, continuation of Comte, called Vienna Positivistic Circle. It produced leading philosophers in the whole Western world, also in the United States. So it was a long way through the history of mankind, through faith, through science, and now through wisdom. We will be dealing with scientific development more in detail, and also with wisdom. I think wisdom represents the key which preserves the deepest knowledge, unchanging knowledge. You don't have to be well educated. Maybe less education brings you closer to wisdom than too much education. less education is more for wisdom. You know, I have met people I called wise who did not have high education. They were wise people. They knew how to handle the world wisely. And when you look at 20th century, at what's going on in today's world, you know, all this hatred, all these fights, all these beheadings, and this is done in name of religion. Mankind has not learned anything and has not forgotten anything. We are in the same boat. So I sometimes at the end of the life one looks at it pessimistically, but we should preserve our wise optimism, that we will pull ourselves at our suspenders. This is my favorite way. I always try to pull myself at suspenders.
Is that one of the universal proverbs?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But it's not wise.
And I was told by my dad, you know, you need good suspenders, but even better buttons, you know. When the buttons are firmly inserted in, you know, you can pull yourself. It is up to you. So this is roughly everything I wanted to tell you today about this tree and how the third one is projected to be kind of binding faith and science together. Faith, and there is one book I am passing by, The End of Faith. This is idealistic book of Mr. Harris. You know, he will not succeed. The faith is so deeply rooted in human nature that it cannot be collectively eliminated. Things which are going on by great majority of humankind are dictated from within by deep faith. Another example, you know, a personal example, I encountered this primitive religion at the beginning of my career at the University of Alaska in '62, when I went to Sitka to teach the first course at new college established in Sitka. And they were interested in a course called History of Russia up to Battle of Sitka. It was a historical battle, 1802, when Russians smashed Tlingits and established themselves, you know, as an imperial power in Sitka, from which they tried to rule the whole Pacific. This was a great dream. Baranov, their boss, Governor Baranov, had friends coming from St. Petersburg who went in using Russian way, you know, handsome guys, who they went to California coast, to today San Francisco. You know that to the north of San Francisco is Fort Ross. Fort Ross was a Russian base about 25 miles to the north from San Francisco. It still stands there. From that base, there was a handsome Russian prince, Ryazanov, who went to San Francisco, beginning of San Francisco, Spanish, the settlement. It was Russian way to enlarge their empire through marriages. So a handsome young man goes and falls in love, with Spanish princess. Nothing came out of it, but poor Spanish lady, she was deeply in love with Russian. Ryazanov had to leave, and went back to Russia where he died. But before that, he went to Hawaii, where he fell in love too, and with one of the daughters, of the Queen of Hawaii. Nothing happened there either. So Russia did not succeed. Otherwise, they had really great love for Pacific. And so when I was in Sitka in '62, when I looked around, among 30 students, there were about 15 of them Tlingits. Most of them were teachers in Mount Edgecombe, teachers of native schools in Alaska. So I taught a course, History of Russia, up to Battle of Sitka. After that, they presented me with their beliefs. They were telling me a story about Raven, how Raven created the world, how the Raven created all rivers, how he drank water near Sitka and then flew over and the rivers started along the coast of Alaska. And it was fantastic. I never heard stories like this. I asked them, do you really believe in? Yeah, of course, of course. So this was my encounter, with animism and fetishism of Tlingits. And later I met them in the cathedral, Orthodox cathedral, when they were singing in a choir. And being naive, so I went. It was so impressive, these Russian songs, if you have heard it. The church songs are beautiful. At the end, I went to them and asked them in Russian, thanked them in Russian. And they said, we don't speak Russian, we only can sing in Russian. So they were singing this beautiful choir song, beautiful. And that they never learned Russian. So next to animism and fetishism, they acquired Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodox. So very strange mixture. And after many years living under Russian occupation, they became Orthodox. So, and they were proud of it. Among other things, I left with the leader of Orthodox Church. He was the Archbishop of the whole of Alaska and Aleutian Islands. So for 2 weeks, I lived in his house. He gave me a library of famous Russian priest Venemianov. I slept in that library. But the condition of rent was to bring bottle of vodka every day. Bottle of vodka was about $5, you know. So it was at that time, in 1962, a lot of money, you know. And he was an alcoholic. When I brought the bottle, he was already shaking, and opened it and started drinking. No, and then, of course, under influence of alcohol, you know, he talked nonsense. He jumped on me and tried to tell me that Russians knew how to deal with Jews, that Jews need a pogrom once or twice a year, and then they can be controlled. And it made me furious, among other things. You know, there were paintings of Russian tsars all around the living room. And each painting was not straight. One of them was like this, the other one like this, the painting. So I cannot stand paintings when they are not straight. So I went and started straightening them up, and he started shouting at me. Rudolph Rudolphovich in Russia, Rudolph, son of Rudolph, don't touch my tsars. These are my tsars. So after 2 weeks I had enough. You know? And you know, this racism, the hatred, you know, and this was as Bishop of Orthodox Church. So on one side, Tringit, members of his church, and he himself, he looked like God himself when he walked, you know, in his gold robe and long beard. So I felt that God cannot look differently. You know, then when I remembered our discussions we had, so 2 weeks was enough. You know. He later came to University of Alaska commencement. He was invited by Dr. Wood. And so he looked at me, and I invited him into my house, and his first question was, where is the bottle, Rudolph Rudolphovich? And so after the commencement, he was already shaking. I had to take him home and offer him. But this is the Russian way. He died of alcoholism. He's in a better place now. So far, thank you for listening to my stories. And next time we will continue, you know, with science and wisdom.